My name is Esteban Kwesi Mawutor Amegashitsi. I'd say I'm probably one of the pioneering members of Toastmasters. I joined Toastmasters in about 2011. And then I went dormant for a while and I rejoined properly in 2019, thereabouts. So I've experienced the initial Toastmasters formats, and now I'm going through pathways. I'm currently with Fidelity Corporate Toastmasters Club. Prior to this, I used to be with the Accra Toastmasters Club, which at the time was the only Toastmasters club in Ghana. I've always had a passion for public speaking. Some time back, I used to work with City FM. I was at the time understudying one of the morning show hosts, and he had mentioned in passing when I asked him how I could get better at my public speaking that there was an organization called Toastmasters. He knew they were widespread in America and other countries, but he didn't know if there was one in Ghana, and that if there was one, it would be a good idea to join. So I kind of searched online and found out, to my surprise, that there was one in Ghana. And so I took a contact. At the time, it was Joe Latte, the legendary Joe Latte, and an Irishman who were trying to start Toastmasters. So I took a contact and I went for a demo meeting at the time, and I loved it. So I went back a couple of times, and then eventually the Accra Toastmasters Club was officially formed, and so I started attending, and well, that's essentially the story. With regards to my communication, I would say after about a year and a half, I'd always had a knack for communication, but when I joined Toastmasters, I had two key issues. For one, I had this tendency to speak very fast. So there were times I'd rattle like 3 sentences at a go, and I could tell from the look on the audience's face that they were at a loss as to what I had just said. And then because of that, I tended to swallow my words. I could say certain things and the words wouldn't come out. A lot of them would be stuck in my throat because I moved fast. And then the other thing was that I was always very stiff. So I was good with vocabulary and piecing them together and articulating them to make a point. But I would seldom use my stage or use body language, and it sort of stilted my speech. So often I would speak and that would be my feedback. That slow down, take your time, use your stage. And then about a year and a half down the line, I had to do an impromptu presentation at work one day, and I realized that everybody was just blown away by the speech that I had given, and they started giving me spontaneous feedback. And then afterwards, my boss at the time, currently MD, City FM, Samens, came to tell all the staff that they should learn from me, that unlike everybody else, they should see how I was so comfortable, how I used the stage, how I paused, and how I took my time to speak. And I'm like, wow, these are all the things that I have been trying to achieve, and now it seems to be coming naturally. So at that point going forward, I realized that those things had become an integral part of me, and I'm proud to say that I have built on them going forward. Yeah, so at that point I realized that I was really getting better in my speaking. And I think just about that point too, I realized that as a leader, I would usually stick to the things that I'm good at, so technical stuff to do with communication. But just around that point, I realized that I was more confident to accept tasks that didn't strictly have to do with communication. Anything that had to do with someone stepping up and leading a group of people forward, I had developed that confidence, and I was bold enough to take up the mantle, and I always executed pretty well. So yeah, Toastmasters has really had an impact on my communication and leadership skills. I joined Toastmasters because I wanted to be an orator. I've always wanted to be known at some point as, if you like, the new great communicator, so for the most part in my journey as a Toastmaster, I have focused on the communication track. But I think because I've been immersed in Toastmasters and I have picked up other roles as I go along, I've come to realize that the leadership bit has sort of crept up on me unconsciously. Because initially I would be the one who would step up in a team if there was anything to do with communication, but I shied away from leadership roles. But I realized that after joining Toastmasters, even when I don't step up for leadership roles, they follow me. So I'd be in any group, mention it. Everywhere I've been, I've changed jobs a number of times. I've joined other societies, and I sometimes wonder how it happens, but a leadership role crops up and everybody says, Esteban must do it. And I'm like, guys, I'm just here to speak, but somehow everyone sees the leader in me. And indeed, when I do take up the role, I deliver. It used to baffle me until I realized that, well, it comes from Toastmasters. So unconsciously, maybe not actively, but passively, I've been picking up things from the various leaders in Toastmasters and the various leadership roles that require you to lead one aspect of the meeting or another. Unconsciously, I've picked up certain leadership traits, and that has impacted virtually every aspect of my life where I interact with people. Three words. I'd say it's been revelatory first. It's been unpredictable, and ultimately it's been worthwhile or rewarding. There have been quite a number, but I am particularly passionate about speaking. So obviously my favorite memories have to do with speeches. There was one speech I had. In fact, it was my very first Toastmasters contest. I was pretty new. I had just finished my third speech, and then a speech contest was announced, and I decided to test the waters. So I joined the contest. I think I did pretty well for a newcomer, but even while I was still in the contest, I had a particular speech and I knew that there was no way I was going to win this contest because that speech was absolutely brilliant. It was by, his name just escapes me. He's a lawyer. He used to be part of the Accra Toastmasters. Lawyer Glyman, yeah. Amazing speaker. Very calm but delivered so perfectly. And I did find out later on that it was his interpretation of a speech by Dr. Miles Monroe, where he talks about the richest place on earth. So he starts with a preamble asking all of us which location on earth you think is the richest place on earth. And the audience would say things like Sun City, people would mention Cairo, Paris, and all that. And then he went on to establish that the richest place on earth is the cemetery. And he goes on to explain why the cemetery is the richest place on earth, because it is over there that you have mansions that have not been built, businesses that have not been built, amazing careers that never came to fruition. So all these riches tend to go with people into the grave, because most people live their lives without fully fulfilling all the potential within them, and they send all that to the cemetery. And it stood with me because it was really a light bulb moment. It was an eye-opening speech for me, and up till now I still get goosebumps when I remember. It's not just the content of the speech, but how he delivered it. It was so poignant, and yes, for me it's one of the key standout moments in my Toastmasters journey. Yes, Toastmaster Moses Kofi was my coach and mentor for the longest time, and he has been very instrumental, not just in my life as a Toastmaster, but instrumental in my life in helping make Esteban who he is today in other circles of life. I'd say Toastmaster Daniel Glyman as well has been another, influential figure in my life as a Toastmaster. I mentioned one of his speeches that still stands out to me. And for me, he is my go-to model when it comes to putting a speech together. He just has that knack for arranging sometimes the most ordinary speeches in a way that makes them stick in your memory. And I would say I have learned, I have sort of learned that model. He's a great storyteller, and I've learned that from him. I'd also say Toastmaster Papa Akest. He's your typical people person, and I think I have sort of learned a lot of my people skills from him, indirectly. I think Toastmasters has made me a more well-rounded person. I speak a lot, but a lot of people who know me now would laugh if I said this, but prior to Toastmasters, I'm actually an introvert, a pretty introverted person. At Toastmasters, I'm known as the funny guy, the guy who steps into a room and can be the life of the meeting or the life of the party. I think Toastmasters has helped me bring out the extrovert in me more. It has helped me develop my social acumen, and ultimately it has helped me build my confidence significantly, and that basically suffuses every aspect of my life. So I'd say those are the other aspects of my life that Toastmasters has unconsciously influenced and made better. I'd say when you hear pastors advertising their revival or their crusade and saying, come and join us and your life will never be the same, it's a cliche, it is very hackneyed, and a lot of the time if you are maybe not a Christian, you sit back and you think that is a very corny advertising line. But when it comes to Toastmasters, I for one can boldly tell anyone that just hazard one or two Toastmasters meetings, take the time to join, experience Toastmasters, and I can firmly assure you, put my neck on the line that indeed, by the time you've been in Toastmasters for a month or two, you will attest that your life is not the same. Without a doubt, the pioneering club, Accra Toastmasters Club, they were amazing then. I think they are still a pretty strong force to reckon with now. I would also say Stanbic Heights Toastmasters Club. For their sheer size and their sheer passion, I see how committed they are to the Toastmasters format and the Toastmasters program. I believe it has been integrated into their leadership training scheme. And so, for example, recently when we went to Lome for the district competition, they were there in their numbers. The organization has sponsored them, and you could feel that zest for Toastmasters. So definitely they are one of the topmost clubs. And then I'd say the other one is an offshoot of Accra Toastmasters Club. They have the same DNA, Jolati Toastmasters Club. I think they're also a very dynamic club. And so, if not for the best Toastmasters Club in Ghana, which is Fidelity Corporate Toastmasters Club, the other three that I would immediately recommend would be, first of all, Accra, Stanbic, Jolati.